Hey, we back. I'm here on Discord and on Karuta specifically. We are talking about frames today. Frames is a pretty big part of the bot, and that's for many reasons. But the first one is pretty obvious. Frames make your cards look nicer. For example, my Iuto here, who is currently injured, but we'll ignore that. I've got a frame on here, and it looks, as you would imagine, pretty different from what she looks like by default. This is the Edition 2 one, which you may recognize the picture from if you have one or you've seen one around. Picture is the same, obviously, but the entire outside is completely different. That's what a frame does. And they're pretty nice. For example, I've put in an egg because, haha, funny, it's an egg. Do you get it? You can do a lot of things with frames. There are literally hundreds of frames, so there's a lot of options for you to get them and make your cards look nicer. There are also other benefits, which we'll be talking about in this video. So we're going to start with how to get frames, how to use frames, etc. Firstly, if you already have frames, you can check with your KI. You may see some frames in here. These personally, for me, are event frames that I got from the recent Easter event. And then to demonstrate using a frame, I'm going to find my cards with mint condition. They have to be in mint condition in order for it to work. Now let's grab some random card here. I'm going to put KUs in the card code. We'll pick one of my frames. The frame in question goes before the card code, and I'm going to send that, and it will give us a little view of what the card will look like if I apply that frame. So you can see here, card currently looks like this. If I apply the frame, it'll look like this, and I get to confirm or deny that. I'm going to deny that because I don't want to do that one this time. But yeah, there you go. Pretty simple. You can remove frames from cards also, but that's going to cost you some tickets. I believe it's 10 tickets if you want to remove a frame. You can also replace a frame. That's free, but you will lose the old frame. So maybe don't do that if at all possible. You can also use swap orbs to swap frames along with all other cosmetics, but we won't talk about them too much. So yeah, that's using a frame. The outside of the frame, or any of the frame, will change depending on the morph and the dye. We'll talk about them another time, but yeah, you can change the color of the outside of the frame. The frame is just what its structure is going to be, I suppose. And you can do a lot of different combinations of these. Like I say, there are hundreds of frames. Other ways of getting them, I've already mentioned events like the Easter event. There is also the frame shop. So let's have a look at that. KFS. Now, there are currently 71 frames in the frame shop. Supposedly, there will always be 71 frames in the frame shop, but periodically new frames are added. In fact, I think it was just yesterday 3 new frames were added, so we went from 68 up to 71. This isn't something that happens too often, so for the most part, the number of frames in the frame shop stays the same. What we have here, however, the first frame, which this time is this garden snake one, that's going to cost 1,000 gems, so that's not cheap. And this one is a carousel frame. What this means is it picks a random frame from the carousel frames category and puts it here in slot number 1 on the frame shop. Every day it will change, and they will always cost 1,000 gems, but it'll be a different frame every time. Then we also have all of these other frames which cost bits. I believe we've talked about bits before, but if you're not sure, you get bits from doing work. I have a video on doing work, so feel free to check that out. And it will cost 2,500 of 2 types of bits. The types of bits that I used will be pretty random, all different, and there are charts to work out what frames you can make with certain bits. I'm not going to show them today because you can probably find them without too much issue, and they're not too important. But yeah, you can use your bits here in order to craft frames. We've got this button to see what all the frames look like, and we can flick through them quickly and see all our possibilities. Now, the bit frames are normally a little bit simpler, but a lot of them still look very nice. Of course, again, you can change the colors of them with morphs and dyes, and they're not too difficult to make either, because bits are not too difficult to get. So that's pretty nice. The options here are always going to be the same. So for instance, the 6th bit frame is always going to be cherry blossom and is always going to cost these bits. So you can save up for a particular frame that you're looking for if you want. There are other ways to get frames, of course, some of them more complicated than others, but if you do want to get a particular frame, you can head on to some big public server, for instance, the official one here. Go into the trading channel and just search in the search bar what frame you want. The chances are someone is probably selling the frame that you're looking for. If it's a bit frame, it's probably going to be worth not too much. I don't know exactly, 5-10 tickets maybe. If it's a gem frame, it'll be worth, well, considerably more than that. Of course, they sell for 1,000, but if you want a particular one, it's probably going to be a little over 1,000. I would say maybe 1,300 gems, something like that. I would say that might be reasonable. But yeah, of course, it depends on the frame. There are many different frames, and you can check that out there. Also, if you recall, when I did test my frame here, it showed me what it was going to look like without actually having to use the frame. This is completely free to do. So if you are buying a frame from someone in a trade ads channel, for example on the official server, they will normally be happy to test the frame for you before you actually buy it. You can just message them, give them the card that you want, and then they will test the frame for you, send you the little picture here, and you can decide if you want to go ahead and buy the frame after that point. So that's quite nice. You'll find most people are probably happy to do that because it doesn't cost them anything, doesn't take them too long. So yeah, that's pretty nice, and it's a good way to test out frames. However, there are other ways to test out frames. Firstly, I'm going to mention a bot here, Keeping, which we have on my server. We have it on a lot of servers, and this has a lot of helpful commands. I will make a video about it at some point, but one of these is a frame. A being the bot prefix, and you can pick all the different types of frames here. I haven't mentioned special frames. You get them in special frame boxes, and I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, there's all the different types of frames here. We can pick one, and it will give us all of the frames here, so you can go along here and pick which frame you want to use. Let's suppose I decide I really like Smithy Forge. I want to see what this is going to look like on my card. Or we can pick the same card as before. I'm going to KLU that one, and I'm going to react. That's the wrong button. Going to react with the paintbrush emoji here. And it's going to open up the Keeping menu here, and then I can type Smithy Forge. It's going to generate the image, and then it's going to show me what that looks like if I like it. I can then go and try and get that frame and put it on my card. So that's pretty helpful. If you don't have the bot on your server, however, you won't be able to do that. So I have an alternative for you, and that is a spreadsheet. You know we like our spreadsheets on this channel. So here is a spreadsheet for you. I will leave the link to this one in the description, and this has all the frames in the bot listed here. Of course, you can't put the little picture in because it's just a spreadsheet, but you can see them all listed. If you want to have a look, we have the bit frames at the top, and then the carousel frames, and then if we go down, we'll probably get the special ones and the event ones. And there you go, Festivus 2020 and Halloween 2020 and all the rest. So they're all split up nicely. So yeah, you can look down there and see any frames that exist, check which ones you want. They of course all have their names written underneath. So if there is something you see there that you like, you can then go and attempt to buy it from someone or some such thing like that. So yeah, there's a lot of options open to you if you are trying to buy a frame, trying to make your card look nice. Speaking of making your card look nice, there is extra incentive to do this. The first one is going to be card competitions. You will find these being held reasonably often on any particularly large servers. For example, they did one on the official server, and this will be just simply a competition to see who has the best looking card. And I would say that probably getting a frame is one of the biggest parts, if not the biggest, of winning competitions like that and making your cards look good. You really need to pick a frame that goes well with the card that you're looking at. For example, this one doesn't go too well, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but if I grab this image here of Ryuzu, which I am planning on getting a frame for her soon, I would quite like to use that frame, and I think that frame works quite well with Ryuzu. Of course, this is all down to personal preference, and it depends pretty heavily on the morph and the die that you end up getting as well. The point is, if you make cards look good, you might be able to win some prizes. Of course, these kind of competitions are pretty subjective and very, competitive. But yeah, good luck to you if you go for that. There was also another incentive to give a card a frame, and that is effort. Again, we've talked about work before, and I've made a video on it, so feel free to check that out if you're not sure. But we have our job board, correct? And you may notice that the effort value on people that have a frame is significantly higher. For example, I have here Kurumi and Anna. They have a frame, and we have 330 and 420 effort, given that none of my other characters here even have effort over 200. I'll tell you now that my Iutu, who I showed you at the start, has an effort value of over 300 as well if she wasn't injured. So adding a frame onto a character makes a really big difference. Assuming that they're a good worker in the first place, adding a frame is very likely to give them a solid extra 100 or so effort, if not more. And the reason for that is, if we have a look at our worker infos, and I've just grabbed my Yu Otasaka here, who's also injured, we have the style category, and style makes a big difference, and I mean a big difference. If you go from F style up to S style, that is going to practically double your effort value. Once again, we're going to have a look at the keeping bot here, which is going to show us all of our max effort values, and you can see that we are going from uninjured being at 200 effort up to a maximum possible of 400, and most of that is down to a mystic die and a frame, which by itself would take it to 350, so almost doubling it. Now of course, mystic die is pretty difficult to get. You can do it, for example I have one on my Anna here, but the frame actually makes more difference. If you look at the difference between a die and a frame, for instance, the frame is pulling a larger load there, and in fact if you have a look at the quality here in the style value, frame by itself brings style all the way up to B, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. In fact, if you have a frame and a die, it's still B. So it's really worth getting a frame for those effort values if you can. Now, as I said at the start, cards do need to be mint condition in order to get a frame. Of course, if you're going for effort values, they're probably mint condition already, and you're probably not going to get too many frames, so you should only apply them to your best characters until you're much later on and you can afford to have as many frames as you like, I'm sure. But if you can get a frame on your best couple of workers, that's going to be nice. Once again, make sure not to waste them, because it does cost to remove them from a card, but it doesn't cost anything to apply them. So if you have frames, maybe from an event or something, applying them to your best couple of workers is certainly worth doing. Personally, I don't do it too often because I want to save my frames for when I get a card that really fits them well, and I know that a lot of my workers here are going to be replaced at some point anyway. But for example, my Iuto, I think that frame worked really nice on her. She was in mint condition, she had a good effort value. I was like, hey, let's do it. We get the effort value up. Looks great, fantastic. So all in all, it's a big win if you can start putting frames on characters. Finally, for this video, I'm going to mention that there is generally considered an order for applying these cosmetics. That would be frame first, morph, then die, and then trim. Frame being first because it's the thing that you can predict. You know what a frame is going to look like before you apply it, and the colors can come afterwards and make it fit with the outside of the frame. Whereas if you do morph first, your card may end up looking significantly different after the morph. For example, my Megumin here, who has the worst morph in the world possible, you can see there is a big difference between the colors of the morph before and after adding a frame, and this is not the only frame that looks completely different. If you get a very extreme morph, you will find that frames look completely different depending on the morph, and morphs look completely different depending on the frame. So you probably want to sort the frame first, then dies come after that, because dies are just kind of highlighting, and then trims is just special effects. I will be making videos on all parts of this sequence. Frames, obviously, is the first bit. That's the one you're watching now. Morphs and dyes and trims will be coming up. I'll probably do trims after I've done a video on Koibitos, because for trims, you do need to be Koibito of a character in order to do that. But yeah, morphs and dyes will be coming up, so look forward to that. And then after you've watched all those videos, you can have the best looking cards ever, which is going to be fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here. Bye!